keeping up with the Spirit. Luke 9:28-36. Some of the disciples had met Jesus, spent time with him, but all of a sudden he decided to release to them a bit of miraculous information. When did the disciples get saved? When did they all get saved? Well, they couldn't have got saved until the cross. But when did they understand that it was the Messiah? Well, at different stages. Peter was one of the first, John. But then he shows them now something which is absolutely incredible. Luke 9:28 onwards. Now about 8 days after these sayings, he took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And as he was praying, the appearance of his face was altered, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, 2 men were talking with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his departure, when he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and those who were with him were heavy with sleep, but when they became fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men who stood with him. And as the men were parting from him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it's good for you that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. And as he was saying these things, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. And a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my son, my chosen one, listen to him. And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent and told no one in those days anything of what they had seen. So there's a special moment where they had experienced the miraculous God. And there are people in this day and age, and trust me, they're not always famous people. They're not always people who are famous people or preachers or whatever. Sometimes it's very humble people who God literally chooses and says, because you're humble and because you have a heart for me, I'll let you see something incredible. And so this amazing encounter happened, and there's churches all over the world, Pentecostal type churches or charismatic churches, who want to experience something beyond the natural, who want to experience something miraculous, something powerful. And this was, in a sense, the first church, obviously, officially, was on the day of Pentecost. But there are people here who had experienced God. I mean, the entire universe was made by God, simple as that. There's no other way for it. Everything that we know, all the laws of physics, everything you see was made by God. The human body was designed by God. It's just simple, it's obvious. You cannot have something so complicated which wasn't designed by God. But God comes in here with a bit of glory and shows them something. And something amazing happened. And in my life, particularly as a young person, before I was a Christian, I used to watch TV magicians on TV at Easter time, and American magicians, and I thought they were real. I remember watching this group of magicians once in, I think it was Las Vegas or wherever, something on television. I was a kid, and they had lions on the stage, and they made them disappear, and this happened and that happened, and it was all camera tricky. But at the time, I thought it was real. I thought, this is real. I thought, my gosh, this is real. And I realised, obviously, that it wasn't, and that it was camera trickery. But when I became a Christian soon after, I realised that there is an element of the supernatural. And I want to experience it. I want to experience it whether I'm in this church or a church of 10,000 or a tent down the road with some bread and wine. I don't know how. But if at some point in my life I experience it, and I would very humbly say to you, when I look at what God is doing in the world, when I look at what the Holy Spirit is really actually doing in places like Africa, South America, and India, some things I could tell you, and you'd think, what? Yeah, but the humble people that experience God in some of these churches just don't go and brag about it, but they experience it. And I look at Romsey. I look at this church, but I look at the collective church at Romsey and think maybe God would tolerate us enough to let that happen here. Now, of course, he tolerates us because he looks at what his son did on the cross. I'll give you one illustration, what I'm talking about here. There used to be a carnival where I used to live. And there was this marching band in this housing estate would come through it. And there's this group of women and girls, and they were called the Bredsall Hill Toppers, because it was from a posh place called Bredsall Hill. But the marching band and the carnival and everything came through our estate. But they always came first. And a group of kids got together in our estate once and said, well, why does it have to be them leading it? Why can't we do it here? And it reminds me of the fact that, yes, these great things happen in the world. And we all want God's Spirit to move. And we try this and we try that, and we get this right and we get that wrong. But why can't we do it here in Romsey? Even if it happened at another church, I just want God to move so much. They've experienced the supernatural God here on the mountain, and great things happened. When I first became a Christian, before I became a Christian, I went along to a charismatic church, and I knew nothing about tongues, I knew nothing about the Holy Spirit, because I'd never had it taught to me. But there was a man next to me who started speaking in tongues. And I asked him, somebody give me a lift home, and I said, why was that man speaking a strange language? I thought he was speaking Hebrew or something, or maybe Spanish. And he said, by the power of the Holy Spirit, he's speaking a language which God had miraculously given to him. And I thought, now I'm interested in this Christianity. Now I'm interested. And there's not a moment since then that I wanted to turn back. And I just want to remind us tonight, absolutely and utterly, that however you do it, seeking God is so important. It's the most important thing. There's nothing better than seeking God in your life, because when you seek God, it's like when I shared this morning, when you seek God, it's the answer to everything you're going through. And we've got things planned tomorrow. I mean, technically it's my day off, and we've got a meeting with one of the teachers to do with Ashley and something else, and we might go shopping afterwards or go for a coffee or anything. But I'm just thinking, well, what have you planned for tomorrow, for me? What have you planned for this wretch that is cleansed by the blood? And what have you got planned for me? Thousands and millions of years ago, when you knew that we would be sat here tonight, Lord, what have you got planned for me, for us? And I say, Lord, whatever it is, let it happen. So we're just going to worship now. You know, these evening meetings are going to be more like prayer meetings, because we just want to seek God. We're not saying we even know how to seek God. We're not saying that we are experts in Christianity or Christian ministry, but we have a desperation, again, for God to do what he wants in our lives. And as I say tonight, every one of us, we're all humble people. We all look at ourselves and say, you know, I'm not perfect because of this or because of that. Well, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ tonight, you are cleansed by the blood. And I would encourage all of us, when we've had a time of worship, to go into prayer and just to flow with the Spirit as he leads.